tādu starpdisciplināru projektu veidotāju un autori.
So I think of myself as an instigator of long-term collaborations. My background is mostly in theater, although the term social practice is probably applicable. I have kind of issues with that term sometimes, but long-term projects that take multiple forms over time, that start usually as some kind of live exchange, either a performance or a series of interviews or the kinds of like putting a frame around the kinds of interactions that happen in everyday life and then turning those into some kind of artistic expression.
Tas, ko es turpinu darīt gan teātrī, gan arī citās jomās, ir lielā mērā saistīts ar to, ka es cenšos radīt vidi, kurā varētu rasties šāda jautātāju pētītāju vai pētnieku kopiena, kurā cilvēki viens otru atbalsta, domājot par sev svarīgām lietām. Es vēlos ar saviem darbiem piedāvāt skatītājiem vairākas lietas. Pirmkārt, drošu vidi, kurā runāt par tēmām, par kurām viņi nav pieraduši runāt atklāti. Atkal tur tradīcijas dēļ vai baiļu dēļ. Un bailes ir ļoti klātesošas joprojām, un cilvēki uztraucas par savām dzīvēm un to, kā tas, ko viņi pateiks, ietekmēs viņu dzīves. Tātad šī drošā vide. Otrkārt, piedāvāt, kā jau es teicu, mākslas darba uztveres vai piedzīvošanas laikā šo kopienas, jautātāju pētītāju kopienas veidošanos, kur tu vari atklāt, ka citi cilvēki ir gatavi tev palīdzēt un ka tu vari viņiem uzticēties.
I would say the starting point is very often something that happens that I see in the world that looks like a performance. Like if I put a frame around it and say, this is a performance, all of a sudden something kind of like, that's the initial spark. So an example is that I have a long series of like a body of work that's related to local government meetings. There's a theater piece that I co-created with an artist named Mallory Catlett that was a participatory performance that happened like between 2012 and 14 in 5 different cities. And then we wrote a book that's drawn from the performance practice. And now I also teach like our approach to college students, and we're making a curriculum for young people to use theater as a tool for civic engagement. And the initial spark for that project was literally I got dragged to a local government meeting. I was like in another city where I'm not from, and I was like, this is going to be terrible. And it was super boring. And then all of a sudden this really like theatrical thing happened. A man, like an older man, dumped a bag of trash in front of the local government and said, I clean these up every day in where the kids hang out in the playground. What are you going to do to clean up the city? And then one of the council members said, well, you just created a public health hazard. And the guy was like, you just made my point better than I ever could. And so I was like, this is great theater. Like what, I don't know what to do with it. But I started going to a lot of local government meetings and finding that like, there's always something theatrical in a power, like an exchange of power. And so I started recording my favorite moments, and then we made this show. So that's one example of like a really mundane moment that actually has a kind of theatrical power.
Ļoti interesanta pieredze mums bija veidojot izrādi Cietoksnis, Daugavgrīvas cietoksnī, kur izrādes līdzautori bija Bolderājas un Daugavgrīvas iedzīvotāji, un mēs apzināti veidojām šo grupu tā, lai tur būtu puse būtu krieviski runājoši cilvēki, puse latviski runājoši cilvēki, un lai atšķirtos tās mediju telpas, ko viņi lieto, un arī šie politiskie uzskati būtu pretēji. Un izrādes tapšanas gaita bija tiešām sarežģīta, jo, protams, ka ir grūti veidot darbu, kurš ir ar politisku noslodzi, jo mēs runājām par karu un par to, kā mēs piedzīvojam karu ikdienā. kur ir ļoti dažādi uzskati par to, kas ir karš, kas karu izraisa, kādas ir esošās kara situācijas, kas pie viņām ir vainīgs un tā tālāk. Mēs strādājām apmēram 2 mēnešus, un tad pirms pirmizrādes patiešām tā iekšējā atmosfēra izmainījās, un tad izrāžu gaitā un pēc pēdējās izrādes, man liekas, tas gandarījums visiem bija līdzvērtīgs, un arī tādas ārējas pazīmes, piemēram, apzināta krievu valodas lietošana situācijā, kur mēs zinām, ka cilvēki zina latviešu valodu, bet viņi nelieto latviešu valodu, lai paustu savu politisko nostāju, kad, piemēram, šī krievu valodā runājošie cilvēki pārgāja uz latviešu valodu, arī jau bija savā ziņā tāds, man liekas, pierādījums tam, ka kopīgi radot kopīgu darbu, cilvēki satuminās un kaut kā tas viņi spēja pārkāpt kaut kam pāri, kaut kādam savam aizvainojumam, vairāk ieklausīties citos, pieņemt citu viedokli, vai pat, ja nepieņemt, ir gatavi radīt situāciju vai dzīvot situācijā, kurā šī sadarbība un kopīga radīšana ir iespējama.
I remember seeing someone give a real estate pitch, basically pitch me on renting an apartment in New York years and years ago. And then that became the basis for a play called Open House that got performed in people's homes. And since we did it in a couple of different cities other than just New York. And then for this long ongoing project that I'm now involved in called Perfect City, that started because I saw someone from New York's public planning department present while I was on tour with a play in London. This New York City planning department guy did a presentation for London developers and architects. And the way he presented it was oh, I see, you're performing what you want the city to be, and you're performing what you want us to think the city is. But I was also hearing my city presented as if I didn't live there. And I was like, this is totally different from the reality I experienced. And so I guess from there, I just started asking a lot of questions. So those are 2 examples. And then that grew into this 20-year social practice project that is about young people really becoming more engaged with how the city works through the creation of artworks. I'll step back for a second and just say, I have a series of questions that I like to draw on when I'm starting a new project so that I don't assume too much about what it's going to be. So what space should this be in? Should it be actors performing it or people who've never acted before? What is the history of the location where we decide to perform this? How should the audience be invited into the work? How should that, what are the best ways to make that invitation? Is it social media? Is it word of mouth? Is it through schools? How should the audience interact with each other? What do we want people to leave with? So there's just a ton of questions. And I try to go back to those when I'm making something so that I don't default to what is just a habit,
Arī Purciemā, veidojot robežas, šis kopīgās radīšanas aspekts bija ļoti svarīgs, jo tā savukārt satuvināja it kā ģeogrāfiski vienā vietā dzīvojošu cilvēku kopu, kas pastāvēja kā atsevišķi individi un viens otru nepazina, pat tad, ja viņi, bija dalībnieki mums, kas dzīvoja vienā kāpņu telpā un vismaz 10 gadus un vispār nebija sasveicinājušies, tad izrādes laikā viņi pēkšņi tā kā atklāja viens otru, saprata, ka hei, mēs dzīvojam vienā kāpņu telpā, mēs varam būt draudzīgi un patiešām sadraudzējās. Purciemā bija skaidrs, ka mēs strādājam ar konkrētu māju kompleksu, un tur nav nevienam, kam piezvanīt attiecīgi. Tas, ko mēs darījām, mēs sākotnēji likām uzsaukumu sociālajos medijos, kur bija ļoti daudz laiku šēru un likās, ka mēs esam aptvēruši patiešām ļoti daudz cilvēkus, bet nebija vispār nekādas atbildes uz to. Mēs vispār neviens cilvēks caur sociālajiem medijiem mums neatbildēja. Un tad, tad tas, ko mēs darījām, mēs katru dienu braucām uz purciem un zvanījām cilvēkiem pie durvīm. Vai ķērām viņus pie kāpņu telpās vai uz ielas pie mājām. Un tad gan tā sarunas dramaturģija vai uzbūvis bija savādāk, jo skaidrs, ka tu nevari cilvēku uzrunāt uz ielas un teikt, hei, es te taisu mākslas darbu vai izrādi, vai tu gribi pat piedalīties. Skaidrs, kāda atbilde būs. Nē, attiecīgi, mēs sākām ar sarunu vispār par viņu dzīvi, par to, kā viņi ir nokļuvuši purciemā, cik sen viņi te dzīvo, un ka mūs interesē tieši tā purciema dzīve un būtība. Un būtiski bija tas, ka es pat esmu no tās mājas, kur mēs sākām. Es esmu līdz 18 gadiem tur nodzīvoju. Attiecīgi, es arī sāku ar to dzīvokli, kas bija tas mans bērnības un jaunības dzīvoklis, un mēģināju pierunāt cilvēkus, kas dzīvo tagad tur, atvērt man durvis. Tas man prasīja 3 dienas. Un tad jau lēnā garā, ja cilvēks bija gatavs ar mums satikties otro reizi, lai pastāstītu, kāpēc viņš dzīvo purciemā un ko tas viņam nozīmē, tad tas bija tā kā tāds maziņš solītis pretī tam, lai sāktu ar viņu sarunāties arī par to mākslas ideju, projektu ideju.
But I love working with people who don't have a lot of experience, because I think automatically they don't make the same assumptions. They don't make any assumptions about how you're supposed to perform. And often what my favorite performers are really doing is just being themselves more fully in front of people, which is this incredibly brave act. I'm making a piece right now, or I just opened a piece at Princeton where I teach with athletes. And so the cast includes some people who have some acting experience, but other people are like, I play lacrosse, or I play soccer, or I play water polo, and this piece sounded interesting. And so the way that they make a script is different from the way an actor would. The way that they think about the rhythm of text is different. And then for me, that just challenges me to be able to meet them at their level so that they can be kind of their best and be most open and most generous with an audience, but also feel like they're doing a good job, Mm-hmm. Sometimes I think the directing job in that situation, so they're creating their own material with me. I worked with a choreographer and co-director who's really awesome. But it's really about bringing out who they are and what they do, and then making them feel really confident in it. The other thing for me that's just more simple, I guess, is I really like working with a broad range of types of people, more than the traditional theater industry allows, just in terms of appearance or background or experience or ability. It just feels that feels like the world. And I love to see the world that I know reflected in the art that I make. There's a danger in being exploitive, which I really try to avoid. But I guess maybe the last part of my response is to say, there's an ethics to working with people who don't come in thinking of themselves as performers or as artists, that I try to adhere to, which is you always get to make the choice of, you make some material as part of this project and you decide 2 days before the show opens that it's too much and you don't want to perform it. That's okay, then we'll just find a way to deal with that change. So that's also different than, I think that's a way for me to think about your last question about advancing the field or advancing the discipline, which is how can we start from a position of care, of radical care and empathy at a time in the world when things are just really fractured and difficult for people, but still make work that is aesthetically interesting and vital and exciting. So I think often work is really interesting aesthetically, but maybe the performers feel like they've been punished as part of the process. Or there's work that is made that is about a political issue or is with a particular group of people, and so much care is taken that the rigor of the art gets lost a little bit. And I really want to do both. I don't know how always, but I would love to do both.
Šīs līdzdalības un izrādes un kopienas iesaistošas izrādes ir ārkārtīgi svarīgas. sabiedrībās, kur ir liela sociāla nevienlīdzība un kur ir ļoti liela sabiedrības daļa, kurā ir ļoti zems pašvērtējums. Jo šādi mākslas darbi dod iespēju cilvēkam novērtēt savu dzīvi kā nozīmīgu, arī citu cilvēku acīs. Tā ir tāda parasta ikdienišķa situācija, kad tu uzrunā cilvēku, sākot darbu pie kādas līdzdalības izrādes, tad lielākā daļa no viņiem saka, ka viņu dzīves neko nenozīmē un viņu stāstiem nav vērtības. Un tad lēnā garā strādājot kopā un kopīgi radot, šis pašvērtējums ceļās un aug un arī tā cieņa līdz ar to pašam pret sevi un arī pret citiem cilvēkiem.
The starting point of this piece was like an experimental, like conceptual art project. We were like, what happens if the audience performs a boring transcript? What does that do? And then it turned out to do something really interesting that we weren't expecting, which is that in 2 of the cities where we made the piece, people ran for office, like they ran for local government offices. In part, they were inspired by working on the project. Because what the project does is it sort of punctures the power dynamic a little bit. It makes you go like, oh, that person on the other side of the table is actually just like me. Like I could sit in that part of the table and then I would feel like I had power too. And so that led us to wonder if using the tools of theater could make more like young people feel like they belonged in positions of power. And then the other part of it for me that's evolved more recently is like, maybe what we're teaching is, or maybe what we're offering is the idea that like political engagement is often framed as running for office or being more active and voting. And I think for us, for me and Mallory and for the people working on this curriculum, it's also about like, are you doing better community organizing? Are you being a more effective activist? And it often does come back to the guy that I saw at the meeting that I was dragged to. Like he dressed really politely. He did something really transgressive, but he framed it as, this is my civic engagement, this moment of protest. So I think the other part of it for us is like realizing that organizers and protesters are fulfilling maybe the most vital functions in a democracy. And I think for the last like 50 years in this country, we've sort of thought of it as like that gets in the way of politics, but that actually is political life. You know, it's the most important thing to be engaged in the kind of manageable everyday way. And I think that's what we're trying to do with this curriculum that we're building.
Mākslas darba uzdevums, manuprāt, nav tiešā veidā radīt pārmaiņas. Un mākslas darbs arī tā kā nevar tiešā veidā ietekmēt ne likumdošanu un nezinu, kaut kādas esošās sociālo struktūru izmaiņas. Bet tas, ko mākslas darbs var, un kas ir ļoti svarīgi, viņš var iedot drosmi skatītājiem un izrādes dalībniekiem kļūt par šo pārmaiņu aģentiem. Man pašai nepatīk tas pārmaiņu aģentu vārds, bet par cilvēkiem, kuri ir gatavi piedalīties, lai šīs pārmaiņas radītu un iedrošinātu viņus un iedot arī šīs konkrētās prasmes, vismaz iespēju patrenēt viņus vai iespēju viņas atpazīt sevī. Un tas ir ļoti daudz. Un tad no vienas puses tas mākslas darbs, ja viņš kļūst par notikumu katra individuālā skatītāja dzīvēs, viņš jau ir veicis kaut kādas izmaiņas, jo notikums ir kaut kas tāds, kas kaut ko izmaina. Un tad savukārt, jā, redzot to, ka mākslas darbs var radīt vidi, kur šādi individuāli notikumi, individuālas izmaiņas ir iespējamas, tas rada sapratni par to, ka kopumā izmaiņas ir iespējamas. Un ka vienkārši ir jāiet un jādara, un nevajag baidīties.